Good evening, everybody. It's Steve with Real Progressives. Earlier today, I did a live stream about poverty. I talked about an elderly gentleman that had laid down on the sidewalk and was dead. He was a homeless man. And people just walked right by him, stepped over him, didn't even stop to pause, just kept on going. Maybe a couple people gandered down, but it just kept on moving. And it was in that moment that I felt sheer terror. It was like this horrible feeling inside that told me that this is what we are. This is who we are. This is how life has gotten. This is what we do. And as people just passed this man, I looked from afar and I didn't know it was a dead man at first. I just saw a green tarp-like thing laying there. And in my live stream earlier today, somehow or another, Facebook cut me off right in the middle of a very important part of the story. And now that I'm actually in my little home studio, I'm going to take it a couple steps further to make sure that I don't miss that point and that you don't miss that point. So countless times have I been in recovery halls and alleyways with addicts and watched them as their teeth have been worn down to a nub. I mean, you can see the root of their teeth because their teeth are so ground down. It's sad. And their fingers filthy, teeth rotten out of their mouth, hair. I mean, they're just desperate. They've got nothing. And they're freezing and they're starving. Many of them are schizophrenic. Many of them are drug addicts. One gentleman that I met is actually a doctor who spoke about 12 languages, but was so sick from his schizophrenia and was unwilling to take the medication. It was just really, really an awful thing. But I would sit there on trash bags in the alleyways in Washington, D.C., talking to this guy. I would be going to church, but instead of going to church, I would go out into the alleyway and talk to this guy. He was fascinating. But it's not a very, very rare story, unfortunately, in every major metropolitan city around the country. And in fact, in many rural areas, homelessness, poverty, extreme hopelessness reigns supreme. It's all over the place. And we as a people have gotten used to ignoring it, turning our eye to it, walking out of the way so that we don't get hit with a panhandler. I know there's some panhandlers out there that are professional panhandlers and so forth, but that's not what this is about. So I'm going to stay away from that. But when I saw the homeless man in Philadelphia laying there, as I got closer and hailed the cop and said, there's a dead man here. I didn't understand how this stuff happens. I just thought that the guy had made bad choices and that everybody's got choices they can make to do something different with their life. I thought, the guy, I didn't think really one way or the other at first until I realized that he was dead. And I started wondering whether he had grandchildren. I started wondering whether he had, like family that even missed him or even knew where he was. And I went back to the office after the police officer let me go. And I sat there, and the whole day I felt numb. I couldn't really put it all together. It was kind of an awkward feeling. And, it stuck with me for years. This is like 2012 when this happened, right during the crashes, the effects of that global financial crisis were still well on us. And, I was just very, very distraught. And it took me years to finally figure out all the factors of economics that cause these situations. For those of you who haven't heard my story, I come from addiction in the past. I come from alcoholism. And I've been homeless. I've had situations where I've had to have interventions when I was younger, where people had to rescue me from my stupor and bail me out, save my life. And, I just think about the people that didn't have that opportunity, that didn't have that. And that's no way to be. You understand, this is no way for us as a nation. We don't have to be like this. And, when we as progressives are just we as Democrats, we can all get along because we're all just Democrats, right? Or when we're all just Greens, we all get along as Greens because we self-identify as Greens. Or if we're something else, we just self-identify by the party allegiance, etc., that we feel most closely united with. But we don't feel like human beings. Like the minute you know that somebody doesn't look like you or act like you or whatever, it's like they lose their humanity in modern society. The compassion is like almost non-existent. And, it became very, very important to me that I not be that guy. I would have nightmares about dying alone. I would have nightmares about, if I just freeze in the woods, is anybody going to even miss me kind of thing, And very, very traumatic, extremely traumatic thoughts. It's one thing to see somebody in a coffin, nicely done up. It's another thing to be there while they're passing away and loving them through it because this is happening. But it's another thing to see just a random human being who you have no connection with dead. And they're dead because of exposure, because of no shelter, because of no food, because of no warm clothes. Whatever it is, it was preventable. It was completely preventable. And, we as people need things. We need food. We need a place to live. We need to be secure in our person. We need to not feel panic and fear constantly of where is our next meal coming from. When we sleep at night, we shouldn't have to worry if somebody's going to drive a stake into our back when we're sleeping under a cardboard box. We should be able to lay our head down and sleep. I want to show you guys a video real quickly. And this video is very, very sad. It's very, very sad. But it's important. And I'm hoping that you guys take this in the spirit in which it's intended. So I'm going to go ahead and take this off here. I'm going to bring this over. And I'm hoping that as we do this, that you'll understand why this is so vital. This is a loading bay in Birmingham. You've got a drug user laying on the bed. There's a man who's freezing, can't barely move, going up against the shutters right now. He's frozen solid. He's old. He's not well. And this guy is rummaging through his pockets right now to see what he can keep. Looking to see if there's anything in there This is life in the streets. This is not the way human beings, this is not the way anyone, any animal or any human being should be. This guy is dying right now. You're watching a man pass away, and you're watching another desperate man search his pockets, desperate for drugs or money or anything else. This is the last minutes of this man's life right here. This is what he experienced. And I see something like this, and I know why I come ready to fight every day. I know why I'm out here trying to teach economics to people so they understand how to make the world better. And you see this happening, and you realize many people in our movement are more satisfied with just being angry and hopeless than actually do anything. I don't know what to tell you guys. I don't know what to tell you at all. I do know this. That right there, my friends, is the effects of austerity. I have been crucified. I've been called a cult leader. I've been called condescending. All because I don't allow people that just want to just take us down rabbit trails that don't save that man's life. They want to take us down these bullshit trails just because they heard some story from some friend. They want to be able to talk about nonsense and want me to take it seriously. And because I don't take it seriously, that's condescending. My friends, I've lived these tragedies in the past. I have PTSD from some of the most awful experiences during these times. And I'm nowhere near as bad as any of these individuals. But I watch as people fight us trying to explain how to save lives. When you've got Republicans and you've got Democrats and you've got Greens all telling you the same fairy tales about your hard-earned tax dollars paying for stuff, when our government tells us these lies and we believe them because it makes sense, because we're used to hearing about things like it's our household budget. Instead of them telling us point blank that they create the money and that there's no limit on which they can print money, as people like to say. Keystrokes. People are dying, and I mean it. It's not a joke. I'll continue to show you dying people until you believe me. I will continue to do it until people take it seriously. You know, I think to myself, I have sat there and put up with more bullshit from people that didn't want to learn, that didn't want to try, didn't want to figure it out, than anyone that I've ever met. Never met anybody have to put up with the shit. And, you know, everybody says, well, how come we can pay for war and we can pay for all these things, but we can't fund healthcare, or we can't fund this, or we can't fund that? It's because they are lying to you. They're lying to you. That's why. And because politicians lie, because that's what they know we want to hear. Nobody wants to hear that that homeless guy died for no reason. Of course, they want to be able to blame the banksters. The banksters! Because that's easy, man. That's what some comedian told you. So you follow the comedian. My friends, the problem is much more sinister than the banksters. The problem is our government tries to keep us just insecure enough that we'll take whatever they give us. And they'll give us just enough hope using the things the way they say it, that we continue to believe the lies they tell. We pick our favorite horse. Oh, these new races are coming up. Well, we've got to elect Democrats. Hell, guys, forget the homeless. We got a Dem enter. We got a Dem exit. And you huddle off and you get in your little boxes and you sit there and pat each other on the back. And then the next homeless guy dies, because really at the end of the day, you've just moved the chess pieces on the Titanic. You haven't changed anything. You've literally changed nothing. When Bernie Sanders put forward $33 trillion in new spending, he offered up $19 trillion in taxes. Now, Bernie couldn't come out and tell everybody, hey guys, this is what we're doing. Because you wouldn't believe him. You would have blown him up. Look at how many people would rather tell me that I don't know what I'm talking about. I admit, when they do that, there is some condescension that kicks in at that point. Yeah, there's some condescension. If you want to come and learn and have a talk with me, that's fine. But if you come here to try and tell me I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about, and then you tell me I'm condescending when I bitch slap you, that's pretty pathetic. Weak sauce from weak-minded people. Now, I used to sit there and think about this, and this right here, this is a Malcolm X picture that I'm going to show you guys. And I really like this. But it's like, at the end of the day, this is your Republicans. This is your Democrats. This is how reverse patriotism, forget the country for a minute, just consider patriotism to your party. Consider the way these people are jingoistic, just like the Republicans, about going to war. Think about how these party-first partisans are just exactly the same as the flag-waving, gun-toting Republicans they despise. The exact same thing. Literally the exact same thing, folks. And when I sit there and I think about this stuff, I get so appalled. And I want to show you something. This is from Margaret Thatcher. And for those of you who don't remember Margaret Thatcher, let me introduce you to old Margaret Thatcher. She's one of the mothers of neoliberalism. And Margaret Thatcher kept saying there is no public money, it's just taxpayer money. Now, why do you suppose they talk about the taxpayer dollar? Who do you think that's referring to? Do you think that's referring to the guy that died in that bay, the homeless man? Do you think they're referring to him? No, they're not. They're appealing to the wealthy people or the middle crust people, and they're appealing to the lower income people who want to feel like they are part of the upper crust by being a taxpayer. Okay? Well, guess what? That homeless man, if he ever bought a soda, if he ever bought a cup of coffee, he was a taxpayer, wasn't he? This taxpayer dollar shit is one of the greatest farces we will ever deal with in our lives, ever. This is the thinking that keeps us hating one another, this concept of the taxpayer dollar. And as much as you hate Donald Trump, hate him for the right reasons, right? The man cannot bankrupt the country. That's not how this shit works. And, we look at these things, and one of my favorite memes right here that is about to come up. This is the truth right here, is it not? Punishing the poor for the mistakes of the rich. They want to make sure that we cover the bill, so to speak, when their business ventures fail. They want to be able to hire us on the cheap. They want to keep enough of us desperate and homeless and unemployed so that they can pick us up off the ground and make us feel like they're our gods for saving us by giving us some crumbs. My fight for MMT has nothing to do with MMT. It just happens to be the truth. It's the underlying reality. My fight is because of these young girls right here. My fight is because of that homeless man that was killed or died from exposure. And, we have to understand that even though we want food and we want health care and we want things like that, we have to accept the fact that we're in a monetary economy. And Trish, you're reading my mind. You're jumping ahead even though you didn't realize it. That meme's coming up here momentarily. But when I talk about economics, I'm talking to you all about an economic situation that is outside the mainstream. We call that heterodox economics. And the reason for that is that you see fundamentally tools of the trade, the taxpayer dollar, makes it feel like there's a scarcity of paper. Oh my God, we're going to go broke. We don't have enough taxpayer money. Donald Trump dodged taxes, so the government's bankrupt. Mitt Romney dodged taxes, so the government's bankrupt. Some small piker, dodge taxes on an investment. We're going to go bankrupt. This is all about pointing up at the top and making them feel like gods. Every time somebody has something they get ahead, people assume that that is a direct one-for-one on the poor, that they are taking from them. The reality is our government has the ability to fix that. It has the ability to fix it in spades. Poverty is a political choice. It is not necessity. It is completely avoidable. And the things that we talk about here are a matter of life and death. They're not small, we're talking real live stuff here. And, I'm going to put this meme up that Trish had kindly brought up a minute ago. This is one of my favorite things, and I want to explain why this matters. Malcolm X had a lot of great quotes. But he said here, if you're not careful, the newspapers will have you hating the people who are being oppressed and loving the people doing the oppressing. What happens, though, when the oppressed are your oppressors? What happens when we oppress each other? What happens when we buy into the orthodoxy, if you will, that keeps us desperate? What happens when our own alternative media turns their back on the poor and they focus all day long on the banksters? When they focus on the Rothschilds? I asked someone earlier today, tell me, my friend, what exactly is it that you plan on doing to the Rothschilds? They didn't have any answers for me. But every time I tried to explain how we could save people's lives, they kept going back to the Rothschilds. So we've got taxpayer dollars. We've got conspiracy bunk with the Rothschilds because, oh my God, rich people always try to influence governments. It's true. It's up to us to influence it a different way. It's up to us to demand and make those demands stick. But how can you make those demands stick when you've got ankle biters running around telling everybody that it's a cult that will fix it? Oh, they're just a cult. That's not the mainstream media doing that. That's us. That's our movement. Then you've got other groups talking about the end of the world. People are just mailing it in. They're not even trying. Folks, we do much of this to ourselves. And so when I call us murderers by proxy, it's not an accident, folks. It's an alarm clock. It's making sure you hear the truth, that you see the death. How in the world can you ever understand how important this is if you don't realize that austerity literally equals death? Folks, I couldn't be more serious. It equals death. So how in the world are you ever going to get what you want? How are we ever going to save lives if you consistently buy into the bullshit? I mean, look at this right here. I mean, that's sad. Do you realize that this is part of who we are as a country? Do you realize that this is part of who we are as a country? Why do you suppose America has more prisons than colleges? Austerity benefits the rich. It keeps them rich. It keeps us poor. It gives them an enemy. Think about how many people in our movement require an enemy, a specific enemy. They got to have the Rothschilds. They got to hate Donald Trump. They got to hate the Republicans. They got to hate the Democrats. They got to hate somebody. They can't just tell you what the story of how they're going to make it better is. They won't tell you how they're going to make it better. They will not tell you how they're going to make it better, but we can make it better, folks. It's a choice. It's 100% a choice. I mean, I worry so much about the things that we believe in our movement. And Sarah Holland, who is somebody that follows this page and follows me on Twitter, wrote this. And, it's interesting. Austerity is a political choice by conservatives built on lies and fake economics. 100%. The banks bring ruin, but not government austerity, right? Think about that for a minute. They always put it on the banks. Well, it's this idea. It's this idea that the banks run everything. And this is another progressive give-up strategy. This is why we've sold ourselves. We can't figure out why these things are happening the way they're happening. We can't figure out why. Folks, I've cried myself to sleep countless times because I can see it so clearly. I can see it so clearly. High-speed rail going through, connecting people. I see infrastructure. I see bridges, beautiful bridges being built. I see schools being renovated and kids learning again, participating in sports and cultural activities like arts and music. I see beautiful gardens. I see green energy everywhere. I see neighbors not so stressed out and caught for time that they're talking to one another and they're enjoying one another's company. And I see children and their parents getting along because the dad and mom are not so stressed out from pushing paper from one side of the desk to the other side of the desk. I mean, this stuff really, really gets under your skin when you realize how many years and lives we've lost to a lie. Not just a lie, many lies stacked on top of each other. It's no wonder the regular person doesn't understand. The problem is when people think they understand and they tell stories and they tell tales and they speak authoritatively and they go, yeah, well, if it wasn't for the Rothschilds, everything be okay. It's kind of like Napoleon Dynamite. You can almost see him going, yeah. Girls really like guys with skills. I don't know why that disconnect exists. I don't know why people feel the need to make up stories. I don't know why they feel the need to watch non-source, dummied down videos that tell them the end of the world is here. I don't know why they don't want to know the truth, why they're comfortable in telling themselves a doomsday lie. I don't know why they do that. I don't understand. I want hope. I want to see Democrats, Greens, Independents, even Republicans joining in an understanding of truth, because people genuinely don't want people to die for the most part. They just don't understand. But when I see people dying, why is it that people are okay watching other protesters go out there for when a police officer shoots somebody, which is an awful tragedy? Or when we go and we drop bombs on another country, why is that death resonate with us? But when I tell you cutting spending kills jobs and kills people, why is that death somehow or another less worthy of raging against than the one where we drop a bomb? Do you realize that death is death is death? And in this case, it's murder. If you don't think the people know when they cut spending that they are literally killing people, you're wrong. They do. And if they don't, shame on them. When we make the lie, I already talked about it, the whole taxpayer dollar thing, that is something that everyone holds on to for dear life. Why? I will never understand. I mean, I understand. I used to believe it too until I learned. But the idea of why would you hold on to something so debilitating? Why would you hold on to something so debilitating? Something so absolute, because you want to feel like you're better than somebody. That's the only thing I can think of. You want to feel like you somehow or another have paid for somebody else's existence so you could sit there at a PTA meeting talking about those people over there. Those people. No, those people. Folks, I expect that from Tea Party types, The guys with the Gadsden flag on the back of their truck. I expect that with the stars and bars. But I see that in our own progressive movement. Privileged little crybabies. He hurt my feelings. He was condescending to me. How dare he? I want to show you some austerity pictures here real quickly. See if you relate to any of these guys here real quickly. The idea of patriotism, How many times have you heard these comments? How many times have you heard people believing that these guys are the reason why everybody has stuff? Their tax dollars are paying for stuff. See what I mean? Horrible, horrible, horrible people. Wrapped up in the idea of the red, white, and blue, and wrapped up in the idea that their tax dollar makes them a little bit better than you. Of course it's photoshopped. This is an image for purposes of explaining this. But it goes back to the myth. Do you understand the difference between a money creator or a currency issuer versus a currency user? The United States government wrote the dollar into law. It became a law, and it is the unit of account for our government. It's not a piece of paper. It's an idea because it's digital, it's paper, it's coin, it's a credit card. It's all these different things, these means of exchange. It's a scorekeeper. And they want to win the score. They don't want to just win 7-6. They want to win 100-0. They want to run the score up. They want to run the ball down our throat all day long. I have been around people in the middle of the day who came to me, cried, said life was unbearable. They were going to go get help. They made a phone call, whatever, only to find out later that night that they killed themselves. Desperation, complete and utter destitution, inability to see any light at the end of the tunnel. An inability to believe that there was a reason to live. And when I see people make up bullshit stories that the banks own the country, when I see people act like they don't understand the difference between fiscal policy and monetary policy, I feel an urge to teach them the difference. I feel an urge because people are dying. Some asshole said that all I ever do is talk about MMT. I'm a one-trick pony. They're entitled to be an idiot. They're entitled to be wrong. But all night long, what I talked to you about was people dying. I talked to you about exposure, homelessness, poverty. I talked to you about addiction. And I talked to you about hopelessness and helplessness. And the fact that there is hope. There is hope. But it's not going to come from Bernie Sanders. Even though we like him, we love him, we hate him, whatever, it doesn't matter. It's not going to come from Bernie. It's not going to come from Jill. It's not going to come from Tulsi. It's going to come from us, we the people. We have to get sick and tired of being sick and tired. And we can't just be angry, although that's a good start. We have to be angry and knowledgeable. And we don't need everybody to be an economist. We just need you to stop telling lies and start saying the U.S. can afford anything we need. And believe it, because it's true. It's not the paper we're short of. It's the resources, folks. It's the real resources the paper can pick up for us. We don't have health care. We could never run out of money, but we don't have health care. We don't have clean water in many places. That's the real resource. Maybe we need steel for bridges. Maybe we need wind turbines, or maybe we need solar, or maybe we need a host of things. Maybe we need permacultures. Maybe we need different ways of growing inner city urban gardens, urban farming. Maybe we need whatever it is we need, gurneys, x-ray machines. But it's not the paper we should ever be short of. That's a way of keeping the poor poor, and that's the way of keeping us desperate. And we feed into that, folks. We feed into it. There is no innocence here. That's the thing. We need to understand that there is no innocence. An innocent fraud is still fraud. There's no such thing as an innocent homicide, although you may not have intended to kill the person. When you look over the shoulder of somebody in the line as they're using their food stamps, you judge them, and you talk about your hard-earned tax dollar, you're a murderer by proxy. You're not a good American. That doesn't make you a good American. Don't ever pat yourself on the back for that. It's awful. When you talk about you don't want your tax dollars to go to bombing Israel or bombing, Syria, or bombing Iraq or bombing whoever. Well, if your tax dollars were going for that, I would agree with you, but they're not. They're deleted. Why does that matter? Because when you believe you paid into Social Security, when you believe you paid into the roads, when you believe you paid into all these things, it means there's a scarcity that all of a sudden your dollars are all that they can have in order to do great things. So unless we take more from the people, unless we take more from your family, our government that creates the more can't do anything, right? Unless they take it from you. So Democrats, because all they do is complain about Republicans, immediately say we got to raise taxes because the Republicans say we got to cut taxes. And the Republicans immediately say that we're not going for those programs because you're just going to waste our hard-earned tax dollar. You see how this game is played? And nobody wins. Great idea gets up and it never makes it anywhere. The poor guy still dies of exposure and lack of food and lack of health care. The children still get diseases, still run around completely malnourished. Also, some dipshit can talk about the Rothschilds. Our government is made up of we the people. Think about your friends that have run for office, even friends that have gotten elected to office. They're just regular people. Maybe they had a little bit of money set aside, but they're mostly just regular people. They just don't know economics. But damn it, we like them. They had that winning smile. They talked sweetly to us, and we liked them. He had great hair. She's a great surfer. I love his name. He's got great eyes. I think she's pretty. I think he's hot. Does he know economics? Does he know how to pay for what needs to be done? Or do you just like him because he had a great radio voice? I ask you these things because we live in a very shallow culture. We live in a culture where people give you 5 minutes to get an important point across. 5 seconds sometimes. They don't have time for complexity. They don't have time for the real honest answers. They want quick, easy, fast food answers. Fast food politics. I'll take a supersized whatever with that. They don't take the time to understand. And the homeless, as they die, we can't ask them to escalate and take to the streets. They're already in the streets. They can't fucking survive. We have to do it. Those who hear this know the truth, and they have to rise up. They have to teach other people, and they have to deal with the scorn and the ridicule and the trolling and the bashing and the character assassinations and the losers sitting there like they're in high school in a little claptrap. Yeah, Grumbine, he's an asshole. Yeah, what? Oh yeah, I don't like that guy. What was it? Oh, he talks about, oh yeah, I hate that guy. He talks about economics all the time. Yeah, he's condescending. I can't stand him. Yeah, fuck that Grumbine guy. This isn't about Grumbine. I'm just doing what they refuse to do. I'm sitting here bringing economic truth to you. And I bring experts that can tell you, because it's not about me. I'm here to save lives. So I'll bring whoever it takes in to get you to hear the message. When you see these people do these things, all you need to do is remember that homeless guy that died from exposure and look at them, and you'll understand why I call them murderers by proxy. They killed that man in that bay from exposure. They did that. They did it. It's easy to point up because up there is where the assholes know the truth and they still fuck us over every day. Down here, where we are, we would rather tell tales and write hieroglyphics in caves, read our religious texts, and bitch and moan about the people trying to make a change, than actually join forces and take on the pigs and take over the country and render the rich irrelevant and make it happen in spite of them. But we have to fight against our own, because our own will literally undercut us as we try to save lives. You cannot be woke if you're running around telling the fairy tales of Alex Jones. You're not woke. The truth, while a little bit more boring, is plenty exciting enough when you realize that there is hope. When you realize there is hope, it requires work, though. I cannot tell you how many times I've considered quitting doing this. I almost have that thought every single day. I'm not joking. Almost every single day, I think about quitting doing this. because I get tired of watching people ignore the message. I get tired of watching the dull stares, or worse, the trolls. There is nothing more disgusting than a Dem enter or a Dem exit who is more focused on their party than the truth I'm bringing. It's not just that I'm bringing. This truth isn't mine to tell. It's just truth. When their party doesn't sign on to the truth, they can't possibly sign on to the truth because all they care about is vote blue, vote red, vote green, build blue, defend blue. They don't care about truth. They're there for their little soiree, their party, and their pork pie hats and their tears for Hillary. They don't care what the truth is. As long as Bobby Reich tells them something, that's all they need to know. That's more than enough information for them. They don't care about the homeless. They're so woke that they listen to establishment politicians. That's how woke they are. God loved Bernie Sanders, but he is part of the establishment. He is. He may be trying to do some great stuff, and I don't have a problem with what he's trying to do. But he's not my God, and I'm not following him into the Democratic Party. I'm not following anybody into any party until I see they're ready to take on the death in this country. Until I see them willing to boldly take on the death in this country. The Green Party, for all this, it's very shameful. It's extremely painful to watch the idiocy on top of it. But the Green Party has fueled the ideas about the banksters, right? They fueled the ideas about the Federal Reserve. People don't understand what the Federal Reserve is, but damn it, they'll watch a friggin' video that some jackwad made, and they'll call that truth. Reality is, the Green Party will sit there and tell you we've got to end the Fed. We got to green the dollar. We got to change the money supply. We got to end the fractional reserve system, which is non-existent. They've got to do all these things before they do the first freaking Green New Deal thing. They've got to end all these things before they give you a sovereign currency that we already have, that's already here. They got to do all these things. So let's talk about that for a minute. How long will it take to end the Fed, folks? Not that it needs to be done, but let's just pretend like we're dullards and let's talk about ending the Fed. How long does it take to end the Fed? A year? 5 years? 20 years? 50 years? How long does it take to end the Fed? And then how long does it take to in turn pass the NEED Act and the I Still Don't Need Act, the whole greening of the dollar bullshit? How long does it take to do that, my friends? 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. How many Green Party people do you need in office to pass the NEED Act? Dennis Kucinich is not exactly what you call the rock star of the government. He's still talking UFOs, folks. Whatever. Neither here nor there. I'm just trying to tell you, they're not getting anything done for you for a very long time. They're not. They're still telling you right-wing lies about how the debt is something scary. The debt is nothing more than savings accounts. So how is it that the Green Party is going to get us a new deal, a Green New Deal at that? Put them over here for a minute. The Democratic Party doesn't have a plan. They don't care. They're going to tell you fight for 11. Fight for $10 an hour minimum. Maybe we can make it 9 to keep Wall Street happy. Let's fight for 8. When it comes to free college, oh, hell, that's way too simple. Why don't we make it for only families that have 125,000 income, and for only people that were born in the 3rd month with blue eyes and pink hair? That's how we'll do it. Or, well, forget Medicare for all. Why don't we give the insurance companies a handout so that everybody can have really, really bad insurance? Yeah, we'll call it healthcare reform. Or, well, maybe we should invest in the fracking industry because, after all, we need good fracking gas, don't we? Let's go ahead and pump some tar sand gas through. Let's go ahead and approve a few pipelines. Oh, but you don't understand. We have to take money from Wall Street. How else will we compete with the Koch brothers? You see how that works? Oh, but of course we've got a tax to spend. Those bad Republicans, they're so bad. And climate change, well, aren't we supporting the fracking industry? And what about healthcare? Well, I don't know. I'm in take from the big pharma. Cory Hooker and his pharmaceutical process. Remember this shit? Folks, Democratic Party is full of shit. Republican Party, goddamn so-and-so's, Mexicans, blacks, gays, this and that. You're taking our jobs. You're taking our wives, more importantly. White power. We gotta cut spending. People need to be self-sufficient. Pull them up by the bootstraps. Damn takers, damn moochers. Shut up, you lazy son of a bitch, and get yourself a job. I worked hard for everything I ever got, you damn lazy moochers. What is it going to be, the radical gay agenda? Climate change is a hoax. Look at this snowball. Folks, none of them are going to tell you the truth. None of them are going to tell you the truth. And our alternative media is really stoked on likes and clicks. It's up to us. I don't care about the Democratic Party. I don't care about the Green Party. I don't care about any of these parties. If they want to embrace truth and make that their mantra, then I will support them. But none of them are really literally stepping up to save that homeless man, not one of them. And then what about local politics? Let's talk about local politics. California is not monetarily sovereign, nor is the state of Delaware, nor is Alabama or Missouri. None of these places are monetarily sovereign. They're like Greece. They can all go bankrupt. They're all dependent on taxes at the state level. So when you talk about a Medicare for all plan in Louisiana, or Delaware, or Jersey, or Pennsylvania, or Nevada, or North Dakota, or Las Vegas, any of these places, Kent County, Cook County, Charles County, Dade County, New York City, none of them are monetarily sovereign. They all require taxes and bonds to be able to stay afloat. The one entity that doesn't have that problem is the federal government, who has a law on the books that they've got to sell treasuries to offset spending. Well, why do they sell treasuries? We could do a zero interest rate policy, ZIRP is what it's called, and never have to worry about selling treasuries to defend an interest rate ever again. But we sell them, and what do we get in return when we sell a treasury? They take their already in existence U.S. dollars and they buy treasuries and they earn a small interest. It's a guaranteed basic income for the wealthy. But it's not debt because it's not our tax dollars that pay for it. It's keystrokes. It's just like any other bank. Did you know banks don't lend deposits? They don't. Anyway, the point I'm making here, we didn't even bat an eye when we threw up $800 billion or whatever it was to the military-industrial complex. I mean, everybody questioned it, but nobody really took the time to understand it. Paying for the military-industrial complex didn't rob the poor. It didn't rob you of your hard-earned tax dollars. However, it is bad for different reasons, right? It's okay for it to be bad for a different reason than the fake one that keeps us stuck. No, the real issue comes down to that they have cut the spigot off for the 99%. They have cut funding and they've cut spending. It's like cutting the oxygen. It's like suffocating us. And there's like an invisible bubble around the 99%. You can't see, you can see through it. You can see what they're doing up there. But when you try and break free, it's there. You can't break through. It's the glass ceiling. The 1%'s doing just fine. But they don't have income, do they? They don't actually have a job per se that gives them a $20 million salary. What they get is a $2 million, $10 million salary. They get stock options. They get all kinds of other investment perks that cause income inequality, cause we watch them extract GDP. In other words, the nation's income. We watch the wealthy extract that by telling us that we're not going to spend on the 99%, by telling you stories like, well, the government's going in debt and it's a moral crisis. And I look down at that guy dying in that video. I say, that's a moral crisis, bitch. That's the crisis. Not a piece of paper. Not an electronic keystroke. We have got so many people in our movement that would rather believe that the nation is broke, that we can't do anything. Somehow or another we fund wars, right? But we're broke and we can't afford it and it's going to cause inflation. They would rather believe that it's going to cause inflation than that it would cause someone to die not to do it. They would rather believe that it's going to cause inflation than realize that to not do it is going to kill people. That is the definition of a fucking murderer. Sorry. That's not condescending. That's called fact-based discourse. Most people, when they were in high school and college, their eyes rolled in the back of their head when people talked about Say's law, the Phillips curve, and all these other outdated bullshit things anyway. Their eyes rolled in the back of their head. They'd go out there and they'd read the newspaper and some asshole would be out there telling them it was a moral crisis that we reduce the deficit, which is our income. Reduce the deficit by taking money out of the pockets of Americans to be deleted because the government doesn't need an income. It is the currency creator. At some point in time, when you say you're fighting neoliberalism, it's time to see you mean it. Because, folks, as I showed you, people really are dying. I'm Steve Grumbine with Real Progressives. Have a good night, everybody.